All right, what's up, everyone? It's another episode of Stand Tall, and we are about to finish chapter 6 of The Art of War and then dive into the Daily Stoic. Verse 32. Therefore, just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions. 33. He who can modify his tactics in relation to his opponent and thereby succeed in winning may be called a heaven-born captain. 34. The five elements, water, fire, wood, metal, earth, are not always equally predominant. The four seasons make way for each other in turn. There are short days and long. The moon has its periods of waning and waxing. So you have to be ready for all of those conditions, right? He's saying that the five elements are not equally predominant and the seasons make way for each other in turn. And so, just like water retains no constant shape, there is no definite answer to warfare. And so, thus, your tactics always have to be fluid and liquid like water. All right, so we're going to dive over into an alternate translation just to see the differences. Master Sun says, so a military force has no constant formation. Water has no constant shape. The ability to gain victory by changing and adapting according to the opponent is called genius. And then that's it. And then they dive over into armed struggle, which is chapter 7. So armed struggle sounds really good. Sounds intense. All right, so we've got to adapt and be ready for anything in war. We've got to be fluid like water. Let's go over to the Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday and Stephen Hanselman. January 27th. The three areas of training. There are three areas in which the person who would be wise and good must be trained. The first has to do with desires and aversions, that a person may never miss the mark in desires nor fall into what repels them. The second has to do with impulses, to act and not to act, and more broadly with duty, that a person may act deliberately for good reasons and not carelessly. Third has to do with freedom from deception and composure in the whole area of judgment, the assent our mind gives to its perceptions. Of these areas, the chief and most urgent is the first, which has to do with the passions, for strong emotions arise only when we fail in our desires and aversions. Epictetus Discourses 3.2.1 to 3a. There's three areas which you must train yourself. The first is desires and aversions. The second is impulses. And then the third is freedom from deception and composure. That's a lot. That's a lot to train yourself on. That's why we do what we do, because I think that my personal reflection when reading that is that there's been many times in my life when I've realized that sometimes the easy thing to do is not always either the right thing, but it's the easy thing. And it leads to long term negatives. And I think that's one of those things that you just have to learn through life. And that's why you see a lot of older people acting the way that they act, because they have that experience. They've trained these things, and especially the most successful people have really trained these things. Today, let's focus on the three areas of training that Epictetus laid out for us. First, we must consider what we should desire and what we should be averse to. Why? So that we want what is good and to avoid what is bad. It's not enough to just listen to your body, because our attractions often lead us astray. So this can go for things like addictions, drinking, nicotine, gambling, anything like that. Next, we must examine our impulses to act. That is, our motivations. Are we doing things for the right reasons, or do we act because we haven't stopped to think, or do we believe that we have to do something? That's why it's important to put yourself in a position to where you are able to act with thought and have the right time to think and not be put in under pressure. Finally, there is our judgment. Our ability to see things clearly and properly comes when we use our great gift from nature, which is reason. These are the three distinct areas of training, but in practice they are inextricably intertwined. Our judgment affects what we desire. Our desire affects how we act, just as our judgment determines how we act. But we can't just expect this to happen. We must put real thought and energy into these areas of our lives. If we do, we will find real clarity and success. And all of these three areas of training are just like three areas of art of war, right? just like anything that Sun Tzu was talking about. The first has to do with desires and aversions. It's like being honest and comparing yourself with the enemy army, like we just talked about. Second has to do with impulses to act and not to act. Um, right. This one has to do with being aware of your army, right? Once you've compared it to the other army, just because you have a bigger army doesn't necessarily mean you need to go and attack. And what happens if you do have a smaller, more well trained army and you are able to win? We talked about those tactics and aversions and how to win with a smaller army early on in chapter 6 of The Art of War. And then number 3, freedom from deception and composure, and the whole area of judgment and the assent our mind gives to its perception. So assent, right, the high ground. The chapter in which Sun Tzu talks about the planning and the strategy and the part that you don't see and being formless, the deception and freedom from deception, and the need to separate yourself, to strategize and to implement and to come up with the right plan and to see things for what they are. That's why the generals do the strategy and the planning and everything like that. And so the more energy we put into all of those areas, the more fluid like water we can be, right? And the more prepared we can be for whatever warfare in life comes our way.